This girl is a superstar. I've been saying it for years. I keep telling everybody she's the Steph Curry of women's basketball.
Clark, pump fake, rises, and buries it.
She's now entered a totally different category just in terms of must-see TV.
Cashes in. Come on, 22. Are you not entertained? Wow.
Listen, this is what Caitlin Clark does, folks.
Caitlin Clark has become one of the greatest college basketball players ever. Caitlin Clark has become unstoppable as she can pull up from anywhere on the court. Caitlin has broken records that transcend women's basketball. With the March Madness tournament coming up soon, Clark has taken her team to a top 3 ranking in the country and has a chance to win it all. But for this video, I want to go back to the start and figure out who Caitlin Clark is and how she became one of the greatest college athletes of all time. Clark was born January 22, 2002 and grew up in West Des Moines, Iowa. She's the daughter of Brent Clark and Ann Nizzy Clark and has 2 brothers. Her father played baseball and basketball at Simpson College, and her brother is a reserve quarterback for the Iowa State football team. So her family is full of athletes. But when Clark started to play sports, she had to play on the all-boys team because there weren't any girls team for Clark to play on. Clark played a plethora of sports growing up, but settled on basketball in 6th grade. This is when Clark would join the All-Iowa Attack program in Central Iowa. Clark had an insane competitive drive and would play against girls much older than her. Clark's dad once said they had to enroll her in a boys AAU team when she was young because there weren't any girls teams for her age group. She was so good that her AAU team won the state championship and parents complained that she shouldn't even be able to play. Clark would play against high schoolers in 8th grade and college scouts immediately took notice. By her sophomore year in high school, Clark was ranked the #1 high school girls basketball prospect in America. One of Clark's most impressive games in high school was when she scored 60 points against Mason City. She hit 6 threes and scored 25 points in the first quarter alone. Years later, one of the Mason City players was interviewed by USA Today and she said, "I remember thinking, how in the world can somebody score 60 points in a high school basketball game?" In Clark's senior year, she averaged 33.4 points and 8 rebounds and 4 assists. This led the country in scoring for the 2nd time in her high school career. She also won the Gatorade Iowa Player of the Year for the 2nd year in a row. It was evident that Clark was the best around and all colleges were after her trying to obtain her services for their basketball programs. Clark was conflicted over committing to either Iowa State, Iowa, or Notre Dame. Clark valued family more than anything. And that was evident in her 3 schools of choice as they were very close to her and where her family was. In the end, Clark decided to go with the Iowa Hawkeyes for a bunch of reasons, but one of the biggest reasons was a visit to the school. She visited a practice where Kathleen Doyle, a future WNBA player, was sitting out with an injury. The entire practice, Clark picked Doyle's brain on Iowa as a program. Doyle gave Clark honest answers and she really appreciated that. Ultimately, it helped her make her decision on what college to go to. Now, it was time to show the college world what Caitlin Clark was made of.
A couple of turnovers that really cost them down the stretch, so you know that's on the mind of the Iowa players at this juncture. Clark, just stone cold.
You just laugh and you shake your hand after shots like this.
Caitlin Clark's freshman and sophomore years were tremendous as she averaged over 25 points per game and over 7 assists in both seasons. One of her most remarkable games came in her freshman year where she played Nebraska, and Caitlin scored 39 points, had 10 rebounds, and 9 assists, just barely missing out on a triple-double. It was an insane performance and in line with the most performances she's had that season. It was proof that she was capable of carrying a college team to success, which was proven in her junior year. Caitlin Clark was amazing in her junior year. She upped almost all of her stats, scoring 28 points per game and 8.6 assists per game, shooting 47% from the field and pretty much 39% from 3. It was an insane year for her as she led her team to the 26-6 record in the regular season. Iowa was ranked as the #2 seed and was poised to compete for the March Madness trophy. Iowa would grind their way to the finals of this tournament, facing off against 3 opponents ranked in the top 6 in the country. They had to face the 6th-seeded Colorado, the 5th-seeded Louisville, and in the semifinals, the undefeated #1 Gamecocks. In each of these games, Clark scored over 30 points and had at least 8 assists. The 2 most impressive performances were against Louisville and South Carolina. Clark had a 41-point triple-double against Louisville in the Elite 8, and it was an insane performance that pushed her team to the Final Four, which would pin them up against the undefeated Gamecocks, who were as dominant as the UConn teams of the 2010s. The odds were against Iowa as they were 11.5-point underdogs in this game. This line was unbelievably large for a 1 and 2 seed matchup, but That's just how good South Carolina was. They were first in the nation in margin of victory at 29.5 points per game and offensive efficiency at 114.4, and to top it all off, they had the lowest defensive efficiency in the country at 73.3. The Gamecocks were a huge challenge for Clark and the Iowa Hawkeyes, but Clark rose to the challenge. Caitlin scored 41 points, shooting 48% from the field and dished out 8 assists. Clark scored 16 of these points in the fourth quarter when it mattered most. It was one of the biggest upsets of the decade to take Iowa to the finals. A truly legendary performance from Caitlin Clark. The finals saw Clark dominate again and she scored 30 points and had 8 assists, but it wasn't enough to beat LSU, who were unstoppable in this game. Iowa would lose the final to LSU, but it was an elite run that set expectations of Clark being the next big thing in the game of basketball. She was a transcendent talent for the women's game, and people couldn't wait to see more of Caitlin Clark. This season, Clark is breaking records that transcend just the women's game, as she passed Pete Maravich for the all-time points record, passed Steph Curry for the most threes made in a single season, and has stacked up a plethora of other scoring records proving her dominance. Clark declared for the WNBA draft and is ready to take her talents to the next level. But first, we must watch Iowa, who just won their third Big Ten championship and are the 1 seed on their side of the March Madness bracket. The hope is that Caitlin Clark can accomplish the impossible and win the March Madness tournament with Iowa. Clark is one of the greatest players we've ever seen enter women's basketball, and she's expected to be a great when she enters the WNBA. If you like these kind of videos, leave a like and subscribe so I know to keep putting these videos out. Thank you for watching. See you later.